And we are live. It was funny, just as we were counting down to go live, Anoop made a joke and was hoping to hear my famous "We are live" quote. So there it is. Welcome everybody to the SMARP live session on turning all your digital channels into employee advocacy platforms. Now, this is a topic that's really interesting to myself and to us at SMARP, and I know we have a lot of people that are intrigued in the audience. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a good bit of insight today. Real quick before we get started, what we like to do with these sessions is always get to know where people are calling in from. So if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little questions tab. You can go ahead and write in, if you can go ahead and write in there where you're calling in from and where you're listening into the session, that would be great. We really love to see where people are calling in from. And I see the first ones are already starting to come in. But today, speaking with you, it will be myself, Alex, and my colleague here, Anoop. For those of you who are tuning into SMARP sessions for the first time, potentially. Again, my name is Alex. I'm the marketing director here at SMARP. I have been at the company for about 2.5 years, a little over, and seen a bunch of employee advocacy programs with our clients. So really looking forward to sharing some of that insight with you today. But our guest of honor, of course, is Mr. Anoop Kira, our Chief Revenue Officer. Anoop, thanks for joining us. Maybe if you can give us a bit of an introduction on who you are and what you've done in the past, what brought you to this point.
Sure, Alex, and wow, what a welcome. So Your Honor, so I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for finally inviting me onto one of your webinars and your infamous kind of opening line of your live. So for everyone that's just watching, my name's Anoop Kira. I am Chief Revenue Officer here at SMARP. So in essence, that means anyone that talks to a potential customer or looks after our existing base kind of sits within my part of the organization. So I'm delighted to be here. But over the last, I'd say, 20 years, I've spent most of my career, or actually all of it, working with marketers. So this is marketers across all functions and all sides of organizations globally, and many of those going through digital transformations. I remember, Alex, I was thinking about this and my intro, and I was like, okay, what have I helped marketers with? And I think it's been everything from print advertising to SMS to when mobile apps and push first came around. And the one that's probably quite pertinent to this particular discussion was when social media first kind of launched. And I remember being there and companies saying, we help companies with their first Facebook pages. And companies would say to us, we need a Facebook page. And we're like, okay, great, we can get you one. They're not sure. We're not sure what we're going to do with this Facebook page, but we just need to have one because every company's got one. So it's nice to see we've evolved and social media has evolved as well. But yeah, that's kind of me in a bit of a nutshell.
Well, it's great to have you here. I know we've wanted to have you on one of these for a while now, so I'm glad you could join us today. And you know, we're of course joined by a truly global audience. It's nice to see these the comments in the chat. We've got people all the way from Brazil to Brussels to Bangladesh. So we're really going across the globe with this one. Thanks everybody again for being here. And yeah, hopefully we can have a good session. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we actually jump into it. So the way we've structured this session is that we have 2 challenges and 2 solutions regarding turning your existing channels into employee advocacy platforms. Now, of course, a lot of you in the audience probably know what employee advocacy is and the concept of employee advocacy, but we're hoping to bring a bit of a new dimension to it today. So it should be interesting. We will do Q&A live throughout the session. If we have time at the end, we can we'll spend a little bit of time on kind of open Q&A, but whenever we're going through the presentation and you hear something interesting or see something interesting, feel free to drop a question into the questions tab and we'll kind of pick those up as we go on. Good morning from Asheville, North Carolina. I'm actually from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, so good to see NC representing. All right, but without further ado, let's get into the first challenge related to employee advocacy platforms and kind of getting that adoption, as we're going to talk about a lot today. So The first challenge reads, getting employees to adopt employee advocacy technology is challenging. And now, I don't need to tell you guys, but getting any technology kind of rolled out and adopted is a little tricky. And Anoop, maybe, if we open up the discussion around here, maybe we could start off from, what you were already talking about in the beginning. It's like getting any technology bought into your business is hard, let alone, employee advocacy software. So we're talking about basically software and technology across the board. And you've been in and around the software business for a while now, and with a lot of companies going through digital transformation at the moment. In your experience, why is it difficult to bring in new systems?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Alex. I think when you look at digital transformation, new software is being brought into organizations. For any of those that have done it, you probably can testify to the fact that it's not a simple thing to do, right? It's not easy. There's a number of challenges. I think the first one is the time and effort on your behalf versus the potential return, right? And this is from a time and effort standpoint. Anyone who's been through that process is like, okay, before we even create an RFP, we need to go and do our research. Then it's going to be getting our RFP, kind of matching up and assessing which is the potential right partner and vendor for us. Then it's like aligning to time and demos. Can I get budgets aligned? And you're all kind of hoping at that point that, is this technology actually even going to do what it needs to do for me? So I think there's a lot of work initially for the time and effort. And then once you kind of get to the point where you get the technology or the market that you finally wanted, then it can sometimes, well, I kind of think this is where, from a marketer or someone bringing technology in, this is where the real hard work starts, because sometimes it can almost be like, okay, procurement have done with this. The person in your organization or your boss has said, right, you've got the technology you wanted, off you go, right? And then it's kind of down to you on your own to kind of make this technology potentially work that you need, but you're there having to, I don't know, articulate the value to other members in your team or employees or anyone that may be using that technology, kind of having to do the training. And ultimately, at the end of the day, like, you need to maximize the return on investment. Okay. And that means that you have to constantly be able to measure whether that technology has made a difference in your business. And that's where it can be difficult, because guess what? That's not the only thing you're doing. There's not many markets, I imagine, on here that are probably just doing one thing. You're probably all spinning a number of different plates. So yeah, not easy at all to bring any technology in.
Yeah, I mean, and like what you're alluding to there, especially the articulating the value and kind of maximizing, making sure that, you're communicating the return on it. That's super tricky. And like, well, obviously anybody in the audience, we're mostly probably marketers in here today with some communications people sprinkled in. So we're all super interested to learn a little more about that going forward. But now if you think about once you've done the hard part, so you've actually been able to bring in a new piece of technology, what would you say are the main challenges if we think about employee advocacy specifically? What are some of the main challenges to getting employees to adopt employee advocacy technology?
Yeah, I think so. Bruce, like, good news, you finally got the EA tech or the platform that you needed. But employee advocacy is a different beast, and I'll probably expand on that a little bit. Unlike any other marketing solutions or other marketing solutions that you may have that are in your department only, this touches so many different employees across so many different departments. Guess what? You have no control over those employees, right? So this can be a complexity in itself, but I kind of probably say that there's if I was going to bucket them, Alex, I'd probably say there's 4 reasons why adoption with advocacy can be a struggle. The first one is that you've got this great technology, and the sole purpose of employee advocacy is about sharing this great content across your employees that they can then share out. You need exec buy-in. Okay, and where I've seen advocacy programs struggle is that the marketing team or the advocacy team or the brand team have done a great job in getting it put in, but they need the support from the top. Okay, so I think the first challenge is, how do you get exec buy-in, and are your leaders prepared to help drive the initiative across the business? Okay, I think the second bucket that I would look at would be, have you outlined the benefits to your employees of sharing, right? So what's it? I kind of refer to this as the WIFT statement. So what's in it for them, right? So why should I be sharing? Okay, so this could be like, is it going to help my personal brand? If you're into social selling, is it going to help me win more deals? And an interesting stat actually that from Microsoft, who said that 49% of UK leaders that their employees express fear of change when it comes to digital transformation initiatives. And I think there's a massive sign there that have enough companies told their employees the benefits of what this digital transformation or this technology is going to bring to them. So I'd say that's the second one. So exec buy-in and not outlining the benefits to your employees of sharing. I think the third one would be where I've seen adoption not be as successful as when the marketing or the EA goals are very much disconnected from the company goals. So it feels like you're pulling in two different directions. So the company, the execs, the leaders, and the kind of communication internally is about pushing in one direction, and there is a very different EA goal that doesn't align. Or likewise, it could align, but at the moment, what we've not been able to do is show how the tangible, I don't know, the more reaches, more website visits, the more shares and reactions are going to influence a company goal. I think that disconnect sometimes stops adoption of advocacy programs. And I think the last one, I think this is probably the biggest one, if I'm honest. You ready for a drum roll, Alex? All right, here we go. I think the biggest challenge of adoption of EA programs today is the fact that your employees have changed. Okay, so I'm going to come up, that's obviously quite a statement, so I'm probably going to expand on how they've changed. I think they've changed in two distinct ways. One is their expectations. So let me give you an example of that, Alex. Right, unfortunately, the whole world is going through a global pandemic at the moment. Let me ask you a question, sir. All right, do you check the World Health Organization website every day to understand what the lockdown rules are currently in Helsinki, Finland?
I thought that I was the one asking the questions. But, well, I probably should say yes, but honestly, I can't say that I do check it every day.
And why is that?
Well, usually I'm at least, you know, we actually just rolled out some new restrictions here in Finland actually today. Or maybe they go live on Thursday anyway, right around these times. And I just got it I got a notification of it on my phone through my news app, so I didn't have to like go to the WHO to follow up on this. All
right, because I think that just like kind of just solidifies what I'm trying to say. Outside of work, and so I'm talking about your consumer experience or your experience outside of workplace, you don't really search for anything. Okay, you know that if it's relevant to you, that's going to find you. So when I talk about the employees have changed, the first part is their expectations have changed. And I think, give you another example, you've also been shaped by your consumer experiences. So again, I feel like I'm asking a question now, but I'm going to carry on. I don't care. Give me one of your favorite consumer brands, Alex.
Well, I got a new pair of Vans this last week, so I got to go with Vans right now. Nice,
it's a solid choice of footwear. And why do you like engaging with the brand of Vans?
Well, I've been wearing Vans for almost as long as I can remember, and what I always really like is that I'm obviously subscribed to their newsletter and stuff, and they probably know me as a consumer, so they always have kind of relevant suggestions. That's actually how these came to be. I just got a relevant suggestion of something that they said that this looks like me. It does look like me, and I needed new shoes. I don't know how they knew that, but I needed new shoes, so that's how it happened.
Well, yeah, look, so get it. For me personally, like one of my favorite brands is Nike or Nike, however you want to pronounce it, but with Nike, for me personally, like their marketing for me as a customer experience I get on my customer journey is second to none. They know my shoe size, they know like what size clothing I am, when I last purchased something, even where my nearest park is. So they will send me these communications, and remember, this is an omni-channel approach, so it doesn't matter whether I'm getting on email, I'm getting it on SMS, or I'm in the Nike app, or even if I walk past a Nike store, right? I'm going to get a geo beacon push on my app telling me that if you pop into store now, you're going to get this. Likewise, on email, your nearest park run, which I know is local to me, will be here, right? So I think that for me as a consumer, has really shaped the way in which I want to be communicated to, right? So you take the expectation. So I don't want to be looking for information anymore. It's got to find me, and it's got to be personalized and targeted. And then you combine that with the consumer grade experience I'm getting outside of work, right? And the challenge becomes when I come into work.
Right.
Okay. So imagine, and as marketers on here, we're really good at it, right? I've been working with marketers ages. They've been mapping out the customer journey for so long now, with the fact that, look, if I kind of touch or send communications to people, you know, I mean, in the way they want, on the devices they want, on the channel they want, then it's going to help me achieve my end goal, which a lot of time is to drive lifetime value and create customer loyalty. But are we offering that consumer grade experience in the workplace, right? So that right message to the right person at the right time through the right channel is really what we expect. And if we can kind of replicate that when it comes to advocacy, I think we'll overcome that challenge quite easily to drive huge adoption across EA.
Right. So, you know, maybe what you're alluding to is, actually, maybe I won't go into it too much, because we're going to cover it. Sneak peek, we're going to cover it in just a second. But the fact that, you know, when we think about advocacy, we think of it as a kind of one channel approach. Like, you expect people to go to a certain place, perform certain action. So it sounds like that's what the issue boils down to. All right, but yeah, I think we can go ahead, and I promise everybody listening, you know, we're also gonna cover those solutions to these challenges. So this is not all doomsday talk, but we will go through one more challenge before we get into the kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's, you know, interesting because we were just talking about, you know, channel of choice, personalized experiences, where we want to be, but at the same time, we also know, and challenge 2 here states that channel overload is a real issue. I mean, look, it's 2000, it's like 2021. We're using more channels than ever before at work and at home. So what issues does this kind of channel overload concept bring into, you know, the sphere of employee advocacy or technology in general?
I think we're spoiled for choice now, right? And I remember speaking to a few people around this before, and it was like, look, it was really simple before. And I'm thinking, I'm not talking about let's go back decades. I'm talking about even if you went back 30 years, it was, all right, like if I need to communicate to people internally, I'm going to be using email. And then 20 years ago, boom, the internet came around and people started using the internet. And then I suppose the craziest thing is over the last 10 years and more, not just the time frame of 10 years, but at the speed over those last 10 years, where we've seen an absolute explosion of channels at our fingertips, Alex. So whether that's the apps, whether it's kind of email marketing, whether it's SMS that you're trying to convey as a channel to kind of get information, and then social media. And for those who've got advocacy programs, it's not like we've got one social media channel as well, right? I think you look at that, social media itself has just continued to evolve at breakneck speeds. If it hadn't, you'd be asking people to share on Bebo and MySpace, but right. Now you've kind of got so many different social media networks, and they all seem to have like hot at the right time or not, right? It's almost like a nightclub in LA, which is, this is a spot where everyone needs to be at one particular time, and then I don't know, a few months later it seems to have kind of shifted to somewhere else. And the next hot buzz right now is, and I noticed that you're a member, I am as well, Alex, Clubhouse, right? So the audio kind of channel now that's taking the world by storm. So is that, I think the challenges are from when doing this is like, where are my people going to be, right? Like, what's going to be the right channel? What works? Because no one's loyal to any specific channel anymore, right? I know I'm not. Right. Right. Depends on where I am to what I'm going to be using. Right.
Exactly. And I mean, you know, couple on top of that, like you mentioned earlier, we are going through a global pandemic, which means that remote work is really like a real thing right now. Like, most of the world is working remotely currently. And that probably has just added more, another layer of technology and another layer of channels on top of it, and another layer of complexity. Like, has remote work affected this kind of channel overload issue? Do you think that's played a part?
Well, massively. I think if I look at my kind of, say, my desktop and the apps I have, or my desktop right now, is huge, right? They've expanded and almost, I've got so many more there. Like the actual term Zoom fatigue is something new that's come out. So whether it's web conferencing, and even on that, it's like, okay, which is the right web conferencing apps? Because potentially with one customer, I'm using a Google, then I'm using a Zoom. So even within that one kind of like web conferencing, I've got so many at my disposal. You then look at Microsoft Teams. Wow, those guys have just, like, I think I was just reading yesterday, there was the state of the sector report, and it was showing that the increase in Teams usage has almost doubled this year, right? So people are needing another channel to kind of communicate with, and then there's just so many, right, that's at your disposal. So I think that really doesn't help with regards to like an employee knowing what's right, but likewise to do advocacy, to understand what channels are effective is probably really difficult.
Right. And, in the context of employee advocacy, obviously we're going to talk about a potential solution to this, but, in the context of employee advocacy and rolling out, getting that adoption, is it even reasonable to think that people will come to a specific place to share content?
I don't think we give them much choice at the moment, right? So it's either like, here's where you go and get the content, or you don't, right? It's almost like, well, we've invested in new technology, right? So we want you to share. So you have to go to this one place, right? So you're asking to go to a very specific place, I would say, that can be unpersonalized and kind of get generic content when it goes against the grain of everything we said about employees wanting the 5 to 9 experience in the 9 to 5. So when I look at that, I think it's really difficult to say, here you go. And I suppose story short, Alex, it's difficult to get employees to any specific channel and for them to be engaged enough to want to share. And I'd probably say that in order to get past that, you need to kind of start to meet your employees where they choose to work. That's the key, right? Meet your employees where they're going to be working.
Mm-hmm. Well, that segments nicely into what the bulk of the time that we want to spend on today is, like what we want to talk about. So, of course, anybody that signed up, that the topic of today's discussion is turning all your digital channels into employee advocacy platforms. And you just said something interesting, which actually correlates with solution number one to the problems that we've been discussing, is you need to meet employees where they work. What, like, in your own words, like, what does that mean? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think, give a bit of context. Like I went through this when I worked on the customer side, where across my career, we looked at the customer journey, the various touch points. And when I came into SmartPert and joined SmartPert's organization, I could kind of see this behavioral trend bleeding into the workplace. And it was because of that the Smart team decided we noticed that this was an issue, right? This kind of change in behavior. We need to do something about it. So we spent quite a lot of time doing some due diligence, and we looked at some of the largest companies in the world, all the way down to smaller size organizations, like really spending time to understand what their makeup of this business was, what were the most common systems within their technology ecosystem, right? And we took that information so we could understand what it is that we needed to do to make sure that from an advocacy standpoint, keeping our product at the forefront, helping marketers to continue to grow their programs. How do we reach these employees? And it was like, voila, there was two things that came off the back of this. We kind of created a product called Content Booster, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But more, and then to kind of dovetail off the back of that, our kind of workforce insights and analytics, because it's all well and good something working, but you need to know and measure how effective that is as well. So I think we looked at those two areas, like how can we reach everyone, and we designed Content Booster, and then the measurement side in workforce insights.
So, like you mentioned Content Booster, and obviously, like, I know essentially what Content Booster is capable, but maybe for the people tuning in, could you open up or like explain a little more on what that allows you to do, and maybe in the context of what we're talking about, you know, turning various digital channels into employee advocacy platforms? What's the value that Content Booster brings to the table?
Yeah, sure. So in essence, as someone who's creating an advocacy program, like, you're responsible for kind of creating this wonderful content, and like this content that's going to help the business drive its goals, whether it's, I don't know, sustainability initiatives, saying we're a great company, whether it's going to be, I don't know, social recruitment and we need more hires, or something good stuff that your company's doing. Right. At the moment, you're creating this wonderful content and you're sending it through your platform of choice, right? Hoping to find the employees. Now, some of these programs are going to be, or technologies are going to use kind of generic content that goes to everyone, hoping that they share, and kind of still using the element of the spray and pray. Or you're going to be a little bit more sophisticated, and you would have kind of segmented your employee audience to a finer level or a more detailed level, but you're still asking to go to that platform. And that platform could be accessible even like Smart on desktop and mobile, right? But what we did is we wanted to take that one step further. So what Content Booster allows you to do is, in essence, create content and post it in Smart, okay? And that content is then automatically distributed across a number of different systems, right? And no extra work for the person in charge, or the marketer, or the person who's responsible for the content creation in almost instantaneously. Right. It's instant, right? So we've looked at the most common kind of systems. So those include Microsoft Teams. So you create now content, you post it on Smart, instantly that will find its way into Microsoft Teams. It's going to find itself onto Yammer. It's going to find its place onto Workplace by Facebook, whether it's Slack, SharePoint, like, it doesn't really matter. Salesforce, whether it's your CRM, it's going to find its way there. So we're taking the guesswork out of it, Alex. So we're taking the guesswork out of it for the people running these programs. Right. Because as an employee, one day right now, I'm on the move and I want to be able to share that content from my mobile phone, not a problem, right? The next day I could be doing some collaboration, I could be on a meeting, I could be in Microsoft Teams. I get to still see that personalized content for me, and from one click, I can share it straight from Microsoft Teams. Right? And I think there's a triple win on this, right? And the triple win for any organization is you're going to increase the adoption first and foremost of your EA program. Okay. Right. The second win is you're massively improving the employee experience. So imagine that personalized, like you said before, that personalized experience, the right content finding me wherever I am today, right? And lastly, I think we've all been there with the kind of at loggerheads with the IT function on whether it's like implementing a new technology or not. IT have already spent time, money on implementing intranet on systems. This is a win for them as well, right? Because you can turn around and say that the systems that you have in place already, what if I was to enhance the experience for our people on there? What if I could drive adoption, not just in my EA program, right? But I'm going to drive adoption across all of the systems we've made an investment in and get a better return on investment. That's where the win comes in. And that's what we really tapped into.
Right. And I mean, you know, from a user standpoint as well, like you talked about the user a little bit, but, you know, if I think about from my point of view, for example, like you said, someday I might be out on the go. I might pull up my Smart app to share something, but other days I might be working. I might be working on something and have, you know, be in my email for some reason for us that still use email. I can still get that information and directly share from there. I can be in Slack, share it directly from there. I'm sure some of you in the audience probably saw I even posted a video of me sharing the link to this webinar directly from Slack. So it really kind of makes it as easy as possible for users to engage with your advocacy program, if we put it this way. Actually, Max had a question here in the chat about asking, I wonder how you guys see the concept of brand advocacy among employees nowadays. I assume the contents of this concept have been changing constantly and to a great extent due to constant changes in channels. And, you know, I think, you know, we kind of already partially answered this question, but from a user standpoint, that is really what it boils down to, because traditionally And we've been asking in the in the advocacy field, we've been asking people to go to a very specific place, to a very at a very specific time, to perform a very specific action. And sometimes that works, others it doesn't. But when you enable reach across a variety of channels, the odds of you succeeding and like having high engagement in your program is much more likely. And to the question of the concept of brand advocacy among employees, that also just makes it a lot nicer for employees, because they're not having to, we all know how it is, like you don't want to have to switch between too many things, even though, we do, but like you don't necessarily want to go into a new place to perform a new action. If you can get it where you're already working and what you're already doing, it's much more likely to succeed. But Anoop, did you have anything else to build on, like the concept of advocacy among employees?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Max, for the question there. Maybe how we look at the philosophy of employee advocacy might be probably pertinent here, in that there's two ways, right, from the employee standpoint, from the company. But going back to the way Smart look at it, is that how do you create true brand advocacy or true employee advocacy? And I think that's really starts with helping your employees feel that what they do matters, and it resonates, I think, if I sorry to go back a sec, is that information finding them, right? If that information finds you, that's relevant, that's personalized on your channel of choice, that's necessary, and that you're interested in, that's going to have a knock-on effect. As an employee, you start to feel informed and engaged, right? You start to understand the contribution that your role makes in the wider business being successful. And at that point, you start to form a relationship with the company, right? So you start to form a relationship where the net result of that for the organization is that everyone is aligned to their company goals and visions. And at that point, if you feel understood as an employee and you're getting that right content, then you want to say good things about your business, right? And I think you're going to want to share some of the great initiatives that your company is kind of delivering on at the moment. And at that point, what we just say is that we just want to make it really easy. So as the channels evolve, and they will continue to evolve, we just want to make sure that we can really tailor for that.
Right. And maybe one last thing that I also wanted to highlight here is something you also, you mentioned as well, which was the, from an employee's perspective, again, one of the challenges to advocacy tool adoption is the kind of potential discrepancy between company goals and your own goals. So me as an employee, what do I want to achieve might be different to what the company wants to achieve using employee advocacy. And we notice at SMARP that the best way to kind of get employees on board and like mold that perception in their eyes, in the eyes of the employees, to just tell, and Anoop alluded to it already, like what's in it for them, what can they achieve, whether that's becoming a thought leader in their industry, whether that's getting more followers on Twitter, or whatever your metric may be. There are so many benefits in the process of employee advocacy for the employee that kind of outlining those is a great way to mold that perception. And if I wanted to ask one more question kind of related to this, and we're talking now, obviously, like we've been talking a lot about the channel of choice, like where employees work, like kind of, if you mentioned a few, like Teams, SharePoint, Salesforce, what are the tools that we're using at work? But when we talk about employee advocacy, obviously another important piece of the puzzle is the channels we share to. So we're talking about the social media networks. So, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all, WeChat, Xing, depending on where you're located. When we're talking about, meeting employees where they work, could this also refer to maybe enabling them to share to the channels they want to, or the channels that they work in, essentially?
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct, right? I think it's nobody likes being told what to do anymore, and how to specifically do it. So again, I think some of our customers that are kind of at the forefront and have some great advocacy programs like Salesforce.com, or a client, they were generally wanted to let their employees share where they were going to work. And then we've got other customers like the world's largest search engine. And there it's about finding people where they work, but also giving them choice about where to share. And I think that a lot of times when you talk about corporate employee advocacy programs, like the default is like, you should be able to share this on LinkedIn, right? And I think there's like, is LinkedIn the only place for business? Whereas what you will find is, depending on the initiative, that people want the flexibility to turn around and say, like, I'm really proud of the company I work for. Like, I want to tell my personal group of friends on this, not my business network. So I want to be able to share this on Facebook, right? I want to be able to share this on Instagram. So I think, yeah, to your point, Alex, it's not just about where employees work and meeting them there. I think if you combine that with giving them the flexibility on where they would like to share that content and that news and that information, I think that will drive adoption up massively, because it's about freedom of choice.
Right, right. I want to pick out that Anita had a good question in the chat, and this is an interesting one, like straight to the point. In your experience, which internal channels, another question popped in, which internal channels have been bringing in the most shares or generating the most shares? What channels do people share content from the most? Teams, Slack, or something else? Anup, I'll let you answer soon, but like in my experience, the ones I've been seeing as the most popular are the collaboration tools. So you think Teams, Slack, and Workplace by Facebook. A lot of our customers are on Workplace by Facebook, and having that smart integration built in there has enabled a reach from those collaboration platforms like that. So those are maybe the three that come to mind for me. Do you have anything else?
I'd say that they're very, very popular ones. So we see that a lot. It does vary though by company to company, right. And even within a company. If I'm honest, Alex, I was speaking about Content Booster, but I think we've all been there. If you're in a large enterprise company, there are so many different systems in place. Like, we had a customer recently that had like 3 separate intranet sites, right, for different regions. So it does vary, but depending on what it is, I think we just want to let employees be able to share from where they need to. But if I was to probably say that the top 3 finally getting around to answering the question, I would probably say Teams has been really, really popular. I think SharePoint is again up there, and I'd probably say number 3 would be Slack. So not in any particular order, but I'd say Teams, SharePoint, and Slack seem to be very, very popular places to share from. Makes sense.
So one last question around kind of this concept of meeting employees where they choose to work before we move on to solution number 2 was I wanted to talk a little bit about different content types, because in employee advocacy we have a bunch of different content types at our disposal. You can have links, you can have native text, you can have images, videos, podcasts, what have you. Is this also something that should be considered, like when you're considering, meeting employees where they choose to work? It's also, part of it is like what they choose to consume. It's all about that personal preference. So where do kind of the content types play in here?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Alex. The content types are huge. If you look at just us as people, like, I know that people respond to different things, right? Some of us are going to be very kind of stimulated by text. And I said text. Some of us are going to be stimulated by images and videos. So it's about knowing what resonates with your employees. And that's made a huge difference in programs I've seen, about being able to really kind of tap into, okay, what works for this subset of people versus this subset of people in my organization. And if I can really tap into that, then you start to see adoption really increase, because that's how they want to consume the content. It's what they're most comfortable in.
Right. So. Yeah. And that makes perfect sense. And I think, an obvious kind of continuation of this is something that we'll discuss in the next solution. But I think, like you were already talking about, some people react differently to different types of content, and understanding that is a big part of it. But yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on to solution number 2. I know we've already spent a bunch of time here, so let's keep the party rolling. And solution 2 is that you need to leverage insights to make data-driven decisions. And now, by insights, we can talk about, something I just talked about, the different content types. You can think about the different channels that people are sharing, like which channels are creating the most shares, like we just talked about a little bit. Understanding all of that plays a part. But maybe to open up the discussion, Anoop, I was thinking, when we think about employee advocacy, very often we kind of fall back and regress to thinking about shares, clicks, and reactions. I mean, we've even been doing that today, talking about which platforms create the most shares. But is that all there is to employee advocacy, or can you go a little deeper?
You can definitely go deeper on that, Alex. And I think I alluded to earlier when Spark spent the time to create Content Booster, that the other part I mentioned was like, okay, the measurement of what's working and what's not working through Workforce Insights. And when I looked at that, if you really, really want to drive adoption, you need to understand what is actually working in there. And I think we've all been guilty. And I know that I've had numerous conversations, and it comes back to, okay, what do you want to try to achieve off your EA program? It's like, oh, we'd like to get likes up or more shares or more reactions. But it's like, okay, what do those shares, likes, and reactions actually drive? So first of all, let's tap into what's the end goal, right? So what's the destination, and we can kind of work out the path. And then I'd probably say it's like having shares, clicks, and likes are great, but you can't influence that. That's already happened. So by the time you've launched a bit of content or something's been shared or a campaign, you're almost looking back and it's like, okay, this did X for me, right? But what you don't know is why. Okay, so why did it work? Why did it not work? So I think with our Workforce Insights, you start to be able to really tap into that. You can start to understand the why behind the numbers, as we would state it. So why did this campaign resonate really well? Why did people click? Was it the content type? Was it the time of share? Was it any particular region or any particular team that was driving that? And then to understand, okay, what within that regional team that actually really worked to make that happen. Okay, so I think to kind of look at that in the whole message we've said today is that everyone is different. No one's loyal to any specific channel. And on the same note, different bits of content are going to resonate with different people. So it's understanding what makes these people or your people in your organization tick. And it's going to engage them. That's the real key to driving adoption. Because once you know the answer to that, then every bit of content you send out or campaign that you create is going to get the reaction that you want from that employee to share. It's going to help you drive your end goal.
Right. I like kind of what you were talking about there. Like once you know the answer to that, then you can it's no longer, you're kind of taking the guesswork out of it. You're like, basically, what your end result is going to be. And for a lot of us, depending on who you are, it could be engagement, it could be clicks, it could be driving pipeline, it could be creating new leads. Like on that note, actually, do you have some interesting insights that you've seen any of our customers leverage?
Yeah, 100%. So maybe I can give you a couple of examples there. I just noticed something from Gary as well on there. So Gary, just from your standpoint, I've given a couple of large enterprise organization examples. We work across the board. So a platform like Smart can definitely work across a wider array of customers. Just wanted to reassure you there. But I'll give you an example of one of our customers. I won't give the name away on this one, but they've had a great EA program for a while, and it got to a point where it was just like, okay, we've been doing this for a while now. Have we maxed out, right? Like, I think that's the thing, because you're never going to get 100% employee adoption. Sorry, 100% of employee adoption across the board, right? For everyone that wants to say good things about your business, but they felt they'd reached the ceiling, and we were able to work with them as a team. And we found out some really interesting things. Okay, so had they created segments of their employees? 100%. Yes, the segmentation was there. Were they delivering personalized content? Yes, they were. They were delivering personalized content to all these people. So a lot of the program was amazing in what they were doing. However, this was a large organization that was over a number of different regions, Alex, and every region got the same type of campaign. Right. And when the customer success team worked with that client, what we found out that there was huge regional nuances in this particular example around the content type. So this became that certain regions were really, really resonating to video, whereas certain regions were resonating to image versus kind of like text. So once we started to really fine tune to really start delivering for the right region, the right content type, and for even not just a region, we got down to team level within region. We saw their adoption almost double in a very, very short amount of time. So I think, yeah, if you can drill down and look into the details of what's working and what's not working, you can drive adoption very, very quickly. And I think there was a second example that I can probably share was where an EA program, and one of the goals when we spoke to the organization was about the net result of driving traffic to my website. Okay, so this was more around a social selling use case that they had. Okay, they wanted to use SMART so their employees or their sellers, as they would call them, would share content out, and this content they were hoping would kind of get picked up by some of their prospects or their key clients, and then they wanted to be able to share their new product releases or insight with them and drive them to the website. And again, it was something that they were looking at, and they weren't getting optimal results. And again, we started to look at, okay, what are your employees? How did sellers in your organization engage with content compared to your thought leaders? And they became two very subset people. The thought leaders are like, I just love to say good stuff because I'm a thought leader and I want to share my expertise and knowledge. And the sellers in that organization were like, I just have a target here. I need to create pipeline. So I just will share in a way that's probably more beneficial to me at this moment in time than the wider business. So we were able to really tap into that and then create specific campaigns that then started to resonate with each employee segment. And what we saw was a huge increase in unique visitors to their website. And we all know that from a marketing standpoint, attribution is king, right? So we were able to attribute the hard work that the marketing function were able to do to the content that was being shared. So a couple of examples there.
Yeah, that's great. Like, yeah, I love attribution. There's somebody posted a funny attribution joke in our team discussion today. I have to go back and find that and put that on LinkedIn unless somebody already did that. But an example I wanted to bring out was also kind of a little around the same. In the same vein, because it was, and I thought of it just because it was a bit of a surprising one, because when we're thinking about employee advocacy, we often really focus, and we already talked about this, you kind of need to give your employees the opportunity to, choose what they want to share with their professional network, what goes, is there something that can be shared with friends, and, make that judgment call themselves, because that's what gets them to engage. But when we're in the business of advocacy, often we kind of stop at LinkedIn. That's like the holy grail of employee advocacy. That's where we want to get people sharing, and that's where people spend their, most of their efforts on. But we were looking at workforce insights data for a customer, and they had a large, it was a global implementation, and they had a very large, of course, like LinkedIn was something that they had been prioritizing. In one of the regions, they saw that was underperforming in comparison to the rest of the company. And when they looked at a global scale, they saw that LinkedIn is what's driving the traffic. It's driving EEMVs, or earned media value, for us in marketing. It was driving, reactions. It was driving webinar registrants, lead signups, etc., or form fills. But when they drilled down, and that was happening on a global scale, but when they drilled down into the specific region, they noticed that it flipped, that it was actually Facebook which was driving most of their results. And that then, gave them this little aha moment that, for this region, they were underperforming compared to the rest of the business. So this gave them the opportunity to start tailoring the program in that region to kind of boost those results. And it's not only, a regional thing. You also kind of got to think, another idea that comes to mind is you kind of got to think, what is the content? Because a lot of people think that, again, LinkedIn is where you need to go with your advocacy program and your content. But we've seen time and time again, and I'm, again, going to bring up the example of Facebook, but Instagram as well. Those two platforms seem to work particularly well when we're thinking about job openings, because if you went, say, I work for a biochemicals company. If I am a biochemical engineer and my company is recruiting for a biochemical engineer, there's only a finite number of people that will fit that bill in the world. But if I'm a biochem engineer, I probably went to school with people that became biochem engineers, and most likely I'm connected to them on Facebook. I might be on LinkedIn, but because of the nature of the job, they might not all be on LinkedIn, but very likely are on Facebook. So especially for job openings, and even more specifically for hard to fill vacancies, Facebook and Instagram work marvelously. So it's insights like these that you kind of need to be able to leverage to really kind of maximize the value of your employee advocacy program.
Yeah, I think really good point, Alex. And I think it's replicating how people interact outside of work. So again, we don't want to restrict people to those challenges. So is it just channels or is it just LinkedIn? I think even the Facebook and the Instagram, we've evolved the way you can even share to those, because it's not just do I create a post. Like the big trend now is like, okay, I've got Instagram stories, my IG story or my Facebook story. And now we allow posts to be shared on stories, right? So that's what people are doing, right? So let's just adapt to it and the changes in our experiences outside of work, and let's bring that to life inside work. And when you start really working on that, and you ask for some examples of prior to that around some kind of results and what we've kind of seen when companies start, we've seen some fantastic results when people have started, or companies, organizations really tune in to what's important with their employees. And don't get me wrong, we will hold your hand all the way, but a few call out ones there was, I think, KPMG, for everyone aware, like they achieved a 420% ROI with us within the first 12 months. We had Rabobank out of the Netherlands who reached, I think it was about 28 million people with like a campaign. And then you talk about user engagement. I'm not sure, like this blows my mind when I look at user engagement in EA programs, because it can be done, people. It can be done. You can get fantastic user engagement. We had like Swarovski and Rabobank both. I think Swarovski were at 88% user engagement, and Rabobank, the number on this is astonishing. 97.6% user engagement on their EA program. Like that's mind blowing. Okay, like if you want to do that, these guys are really tapped into what's important to their employees.
Right. I remember hearing that number, and I had to go check for myself because it sounds so ridiculous, but it can't be done. There are a few questions I wanted to bring up here, just because we have a bit of time before we kind of go on to the summary. But so Lena had a question about, how do you measure employee sentiment? Does it only work through polls and surveys? And polls and surveys are, of course, the primary way. So kind of being able to create, so we do provide the option for creating surveys and polls on the platform, and that's, of course, we're all used to measuring sentiment like that. But there's some other ways like that you can get kind of creative around measuring sentiment. One, for example, which in the case of Rabobank was employee engagement, and sentiment showed that they kind of were able to correlate their employee engagement numbers with positive employee sentiment. So there's a number of ways you can do that. And the great thing about our analytics platform is that it allows you to kind of customize. So, and we know that for some people, employee engagement or like engagement is going to mean different things. For someone in advocacy, it might be that an employee shared a post. In communications, it might be that somebody read a post. For somebody, it might be that somebody shared and read a post, or it might be something completely different, like had a conversation or spent enough time. But the platform allows you to kind of customize how you as an organization view it, how you view engagement, how you view sentiment, and allows you to adapt your own dashboard from there. So there are a number of ways to do it, but of course, yeah, polls and surveys are a big part of it. And one great question that Olis brought up here seems like a lot of what you cover here, like segmentation, collaboration tools, and integration, overlaps with internal issues that internal comms are dealing with every day. And would it be fair to say that EA is no longer a marketing's child only? What do you think, Anoop?
Great question, Olis. And I'd have to say that I am seeing more and more, or having more and more conversations with organizations and companies that it is the walls are coming down and it's starting to really blend into one. So I think when I talked about the philosophy earlier, like if information finds you, and it doesn't have to be information finding you in a workplace that needs to be externally sharing content, right? So if it's just information that finds me, that enables me to do my job better, I start to feel more informed and engaged. I then start to form a strong relationship with this company. Then I get brand advocacy off the back of that anyway. So they are massively interlinked, and we're seeing more and more of that.
Yep. And that's also, communications is typically, or will more often than not be, the department in charge of a lot of these channels. What we've been talking about today primarily was turning all of your digital channels into employee advocacy platforms. So communications, of course, manages a lot of those. So this is definitely becoming a kind of interplay, a combined effort by those two departments. And Nathalie, of course, I saw your question. I already answered it in the chat, but yes, our Teams and SharePoint integrations are already built. For more information on what integrations we support, feel free to check out our website. And especially Anoop was talking about Content Booster. That page has a bunch of information on our integrations. All right, but we're getting close to the end. And what I wanted to still do before we sign off, Luca, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I will send you that case study after this. So hang tight. But yeah, or actually maybe somebody can post in the chat if somebody finds it from our team that's listening. But what I want to do before we sign off is kind of just really quickly recap and summarize the two main points we talked about today. Because like if there's one thing or two things you take away from today's session in, when you're trying to build that adoption, build that engagement with your advocacy programs, there's really two things that we want you to kind of walk away with. The first one, something we discussed heavily, is meet employees where they choose to work, not where you tell them to go work. Like, give them the option to engage with your content wherever they happen to be. And the second one, which we talked about a bunch there towards the end, was use insights to improve your processes. Now, like these two, of course, were the bulk of our solutions today. You think it's fair to say that these are the most two important things that people should walk away with? Yeah,
100%, Alex. Like the kind of the consumer experience coming into the workplace. So you have to meet employees where they choose to work, because it's really tough for you to guess otherwise, right? If you're someone in charge of a program, it's difficult to guess. So it doesn't matter where they go, they're just going to get the great content you've created. And I think, again, to your point, like, it's always about, can I continuously improve, right? And like, it's about, okay, fine tuning, refining to keep improving adoption, keep improving engagement, and keep improving the end results for you're trying to achieve your EA program. So yeah, 100%, those would be the top two.
Right. And, you already mentioned some of the great results some of our customers have seen. And I saw there's our team member, Bruno and Anita, are posting some of the resources we talked about in the chat. Thanks, guys, for bringing those up. I can multitask a little bit while I'm hosting these, but I can't go through all of my different tabs. And if you mentioned some of the great results some of our customers have seen, you highlighted KPMG, the Rabobank case study, which is now in the chat, as well as the Swarovski, for example. But something that we wanted to highlight, when you're able to kind of implement these two key concepts across the board, we see great results with our customer base. So Anoop, I know you're probably the most proud of these stats. So maybe you wanna list them off for everybody.
Yeah, thanks. I feel like, honestly, warning guys, shameless plug coming up right now, but it's something that I'm personally really proud of, because trying to be a customer, or being a customer-centric organization, is something I believe massively in, to do the best for our customers. And something that I'm proud of is that, like, when customers move to whatever technology they're using to Smart, that we are able to reel off these sorts of results for our customers. And that's on average a 300% return on investment. We almost say that coming to Smart from anyone else, from any other solution, will give you a 15% higher user engagement rate. We would look to double your user adoption. We've done that on average, and this is for our own customers, so this is real data. And then for companies that move to Smart and work with us and partner with us, we save on average 33% more on ad spend savings compared to the partner they were using or working with before. So yeah, a bit of a plug there, but look, something that I'm really, really proud of. And I know our customers really, really appreciate the work that we do there.
Well, I'll give you that plug here towards the end. All right, but before we go on to the closing remarks still, and kind of some of our information where you can get in touch, I wanted to just highlight that, of course, we at SMARP host these sessions every month, and next month is a very special one because it's the return of our Great Comms Debate series. So this, of course, has been highly popular among marketers and communicators, and it's always a lot of fun. It's just, you know, a whirlwind of conversation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a button on your screen. You're going to see it right now. If you click that link, it'll take you to the landing page where you can save your seat. Don't worry, it won't take you out of the webinar. You'll still be here, still be with us. But if you want, just go ahead and sign up from there. Yeah, that's always a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. But with that, I think that concludes us for today's session. Thanks everybody for joining us. It was interesting discussion to, you know, because this is not something we typically think about when we think about employee advocacy, like enabling advocacy in somewhere like Teams or in SharePoint or wherever your employees are working. So it's always a fun discussion. Anoop, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. Any kind of last closing remarks, words of wisdom before we sign off?
First of all, thanks for having me, Alex. It's been great to have this conversation. Just words of wisdom, I'd summarize, just probably say, listen, it's a tough job if you're in charge of an EA program. Adoption is always a key challenge, but the takeaway would be, just if you can evolve to the changes in your employees' behavior, your adoption is going to increase massively as well. So think about that as well, and keep up the good work for the EA program runners out there. Well done. You guys are doing a great job. And likewise, if you want to get in touch, please feel free to connect with me on my LinkedIn. Likewise, anoop.kira@smart.com. And if you're interested in any of the things I've said today or any of our product offerings, just feel free to get in touch.
Perfect. Well, that's that same goes for me. If anything I mentioned or brought up during the session, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or through email. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I see Natalie. I see. I like the most commonly asked question. I like that. But yeah, thank you everybody for being here. And yes, we will see you in the next session. Bye.
Bye, guys.